Okay, a couple of things is the fire marshal called and says stay out of the aisles. And besides, it looks neat to see everybody boogie in front of their own seat. It's like the space shuttle or something. It has a sense of order. Watch out up there. As you notice when you come down on those upper balconies, it's steep and sudden. And if you're chemically uncertain, go down backwards on your hands and knees. Yeah, I wore white last night, trying to coax the dead into wearing white, and talked to Garcia about if he wouldn't take his black T-shirt off. I'll tell you a secret. He tattooed that on. It's been on, for 8 years. See, it saves in laundry bills like mad. Okay, the Dreadful Great.
Good stuff.
Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app to your smartphone so you can stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. Can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. Anyone who has followed the Jake Feinberg Show understands its spiritual and multidimensional aspects. The Merry Pranksters were driven by inspiration from spirit and a desire for authentic human connection. They were poets, writers, line steppers, provocateurs, and leaders who wanted to create social change through expanding consciousness and passing down a stronger prankster aesthetic to their children. Their inspirer, Ken Kesey, laid the groundwork with his first novel, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and his second novel, Sometimes a Great Notion, reveals his spirit at work. Having a flair for the dramatic, he really wanted to be an actor and sauntered down to Los Angeles only to be flummoxed by the likes of Paul Newman. Kesey was not alone in his endeavors. He rolled with the lag doctor Neal Cassady, sky pilot Ken Babbs, the philosopher George Walker, and my guest. These cats formed the original Merry Pranksters who wrote and performed plays, partied with the Hells Angels, and always attempted to include all of humanity in their endeavors. They were smart but not chauvinistic, patriotic but not blinded by the dangers of the military-industrial complex, provocateurs but never advocated violence. They never dosed anyone with drugs intentionally and had no agenda other than to have fun and disrupt those who took themselves too seriously. Their flair, can-do spirit, and collective chutzpah will live on to be passed down to future generations of nonconformists and outlaws who don't believe what society tells them they should. Mountain Girl Carolyn Garcia, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Well, hello there, Jake, and everybody else. It's always fun to go on the radio. So, what do you got for me today? What do we want to talk about here besides everything?
Yeah, we're on everything. I kind of just wanted to just know. I know you were in the labs at Berkeley, and I'm just wondering did you ever get hip to Perry Lane?
Actually, I came to Palo Alto. I think that by the time I got there, Perry Lane had pretty much was over, and the Keseys had moved to their other nest, which was over the hill on the way to the beach out in La Honda, California, which is a beautiful redwood little wayside town on the way to the beach from Palo Alto. And so I didn't meet them for about a year and a half until I got fired from my job at Stanford, actually, not at Cal. And
yeah, I'm sorry, at Stanford, that's right.
Yeah, I was working in the organic chemistry lab at Stanford University. I had a really amazing job, and I guess it was the summer of '64, and I soon found myself kind of knocking around Palo Alto on a bicycle because I didn't have a car, I just had a bike. And I had bought a really nice Honda 50, which was a great little tool in those days, but it had gotten stolen. So I was without wheels except for my bicycle. So I saw everything from that bicycle. But I discovered music. As soon as I got fired from my job, I discovered the music scene in Palo Alto, which was really frisky and up and running and in great shape. So I can talk about that.
Yeah, no, this is important because there was the Big Beat Club where one of the acid tests took place. But I mean, what were the clubs you were? Would you say before that you were kind of?
Or 18, I guess, by that time. So I couldn't go in any of the alcohol-serving clubs. But there was this pizza parlor in town called The Tangent. And on the top floor, it had a second floor with a little staircase that went up. There was a small venue up there. And that's when I was riding my bike past one evening, and I heard this amazing music coming out of there. And I just parked my bike immediately and went up there. And it was unfortunately I would have had to buy a ticket, so I kind of snuck in actually.
Good, that's good. I do that. Yeah.
And it was the Mother McCree's Uptown Jug Champions in all their amazing, strange glory at the time, which was Jerry and all his buddies, and it was really a funny gig. They were doing old timey music. Jug band. It was a jug band, but they had a jug player. They had a washtub bass, and all of these folks that were on stage wound up being part of the Grateful Dead empire in one role or another. And so
I'm sorry, who was playing washtub bass?
It was Bob Matthews was playing.
The legendary engineer, dude. I can't believe that dude was playing washtub bass, man. And unbelievable.
Hell, somebody had to play it. It wasn't hard.
No, I'm obsessed with that, though.
And it was the silliest, funnest show. And Jerry, of course, was just tearing it up on guitar and banjo. And I believe there was a fiddle player in the lineup that I don't know quite who that was. But somebody doing research could find out a lot more about that gig. But it was just such powerful music at the time, all acoustic and just not a whole lot of amplification. But they just tore the place up. It was so much fun, and the rhythms were really fast. Well, Pigpen, of course, was playing harmonica, and
what about Billy? Was Billy there?
I don't think that. I think this was pre-Billy.
So there was no trap drummer. It was just the washtub bass was keeping the rhythm.
There might have been Billy. He might have been there.
Oh man, I'd love to nail this down.
Yeah. But it would definitely Pigpen was playing, and they had several more members there wandering about, and it was as darling as it could possibly be. And I just went, oh my goodness! I think I found something really important. I was so taken with it. And what I didn't know was I was taking guitar lessons at Dana Morgan's music shop.
Absolutely.
But I was taking them from somebody else, not Jerry. But mainly, Jerry and I were like a wall apart because he was giving other music lessons to other people, guitar lessons to other people on the other side of that wall. And I could hear them rehearsing and talking and stuff. And so Palo Alto was not a big place, but it had this huge university in it that really defined its role in the Bay Area. Was that everybody knew somebody that was either working or going to Stanford, and that was like a magic word. I'm working at Stanford. That opened doors for me.
Well, listen, I mean, this is so you're waxing poetic here. We have a game on this program called Name That Voice, and this ties exactly into this culture that you were marinating. I want you to take a listen to this. I've been on this trip for a long time, Mountain Girl.
Mm-hmm.
We'll put this in and we'll come back.
Okay.
I went over there. I visited the Albans, Pete Alvin and his older brother Rodney, who has passed away now. And Rodney has this idea of we'll get our own little beatnik cabaret kind of a scene, because he got Mr. Houchins at the bookstore to give us the top floor of the bookstore every Tuesday and Thursday night that summer. And so we went up there upstairs and turned the bookcase down on the floor upside down and put a rug over it. That was our stage. Got one of those RCA hand grenade microphones, and that was the mic and a Bogan amplifier and some speakers, and we were in business. And we went down to Kepler's and asked some of the beatniks down there. We said, can you come up and play? Because some of them were musicians and stuff, and so me and Peter looking through the books, and there's this hairy guy playing at a table. And you could get a cup of espresso at the bookstore and sit down at a table. And he's playing a 12-string, and he's just hair from here to here, and Rodney says, that's Jerry Garcia, And
Wow.
Rodney had asked me to bring my banjo. I didn't know why, but he just said, get your banjo. And so I went, no, hey. And Rodney's got me sitting in front of Jerry Garcia with a banjo. And Garcia's looking at me and, well, can you play it? And I played my little thing, and he said, oh, that's very pretty. And then Rodney talked him into coming up and playing at what we called the Boar's Head, that upstairs at Houchin's bookstore. And so that, to me, is the beginning of the whole thing. And it was...
All right, Mountain Girl, you want to take a guess who that is?
Oh, I think I know who that is. That's my dear friend David Nelson.
Bang, bang, you got it, David
Yeah.
Nelson. And I want, now that you mentioned that you were a hip cat and playing, did you play at the Boar's Head?
I did not. I didn't really know about the Boar's Head until I was whisked away in another direction. I didn't hear about it till later. In other words, I just didn't know the right people until I never really met any of the musicians formally until sometime later. So we did the first gig at the first music. It was the first attempt at an acid test at Kesey's up in La Honda.
Really?
And that's when the various musicians and the layabouts in Palo Alto got called to come up there and play, and that's when I actually formally met those guys. Before then, I could just recognize them on the street.
Right. So the Nelson Garcia Albin configuration, that was kind of, you were still like in school maybe, or you had a good job, or that was even pre-Stanford?
No, I was just wandering freely.
You were on your bike,
freely.
yeah. No,
and I was on my little motorcycle, and I got taken up to Ken's and by Neal Cassady in an amazing event where I had split up with my then boyfriend, this really nice guy named David, who was an art student at the U of O, and I think it was about June, at the end of the second semester there, his mother came and collected him and took him back to Kansas. And I was just in shock because we had such a night. We had a good thing going. And so I rode away on my motorcycle as his mother was getting him to pack out of the little house that he had there. And I went over to St. Michael's Alley, which was the coffee shop that everybody went to on University Avenue in Palo Alto. It was a very nice place. And Robert Hunter was the manager there at that time, and he was well known for having a bad temper. And I parked my little motorcycle on the sidewalk, and he immediately came out. He says, "You got to move your motorcycle. You can't leave there. You've got to go park it." And he gave me the razzle-dazzle. So I reparked in a better spot, even though I was in a terrible mood. And I went inside and I sat down and I got a cup of coffee with a scoop of ice cream in it because I was feeling really sorry for myself. And I sit down and these two guys come in. And one's an older guy, one's kind of a cute younger guy with a Beatles haircut, which was really popular then. Blonde guy, and he's wearing a Stanford Letterman's jacket with a tennis racket on it. And I'm going, well, they must be okay, as they're sitting down, and they just dialed in on me immediately. And within half a minute, they were over at my table wanting to know if I knew where Joe was. And I'm thinking, what is this, a Mad Magazine moment? Yeah, I don't know Joe. What do you mean? What kind of Joe? And they said, then they left. Oh, they were looking for this guy that they knew, his then sidekick Bradley Hodgman, who was a tennis star at Stanford.
Wow.
I don't know where Bradley is these days, but I think he's way back in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which was where he came from. And so Neal, he's talking a blue streak, yakety, yakety, yak. And we're going to go here. We're going to go there. And, hey, honey, do you want to go smoke a joint? I said, well, I had one in my pocket already.
Absolutely.
And I said, okay. so we go outside, and they usher me to this little white station wagon that has a weird logo on the door, and we get in, and Neal is talking a blue streak. I mean, he just is talking, but it's interesting. He's not boring. He's talking about all sorts of interesting things, like matter, instantaneous matter transmission, and science fiction stories, and relating it to passages in the Bible as we go. And he starts the car up, and he drives a few blocks up the street, and then hangs a tight. He crossed the railroad tracks, slammed the car into reverse, and then backed the car onto the railroad tracks and gunned it. And we went north on the railroad tracks in reverse. This is well after dark. It's got to be like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. The headlights on. I'm going, what the fuck? I'm laughing hysterically. First of all, I'm high, and I'm laughing hysterically. And these guys are the weirdest idiots I've ever run into in my life.
Idiots.
And I said, why are you driving in reverse on the railroad tracks? He says, well, it saves the front end. It's not my car. In other words, this was supposed to protect the undercarriage of the car from serious
total
damage.
madman drive. Just great logic out of him, tremendous.
He's got his arm around me so that he can turn around and look behind himself, right? He's got me in a good clinch. And then he drives, we go 5 or 6 blocks backwards up the railroad tracks, and I'm starting to panic because I'm thinking, wait a minute, a train could be coming. And he says, no, don't worry, dear. I work for the railroad, not a problem.
It's true.
And I'm just taking another breath finally because I think I was holding my breath. And he swings the car off the railroad tracks and down into a little park there, the old Lone Tree Park in Palo Alto, where the tree is long gone. But there is a bench. We sit on the bench and we smoke a joint. And about 5 minutes after we park the car, here comes the train, right where we were. And I was just like going, oh my God, these guys are crazy, but I kind of like them.
Wait, hold on. I just want to be. I got to go back for a minute. Did you? So wait. This tennis cat, and.
Oh, Bradley. Yeah.
No, but I mean, I was saying, did Cassady walk in with the tennis star? Is that who the older guy was?
Yeah, that was his sidekick at the time.
Got it.
They came together.
And they said, "Where's Joe?" But then they couldn't find him, and then so they asked you if you wanted to roast a joint.
Yeah, exactly.
That is, I mean, I knew there was a story because I'm like the only thing that's in the ethos is that Mountain Girl, wound up at La Honda because of because she met Neal Cassady. I'm like, well, you just don't meet Neal Cassady. I mean, it was obviously a major story.
He picked me up and drove me backwards up the railroad tracks. And then we went, and then he said, hey, let's just go drive around for a while. And I was just in that kind of mood, so I said, okay. And so we drove around all night long with him showing off his amazing driving skills. And then we wound up at Kesey's at 4 o'clock in the morning, just as the sun was starting to come up.
Oh, it's just time to start going. Yeah, it's just getting going.
Yeah, and because he had to get the car back because it was Ken's car. So we swing into the driveway, and it's all completely quiet. And we tiptoe out of the car, and here comes Ken around the corner. And seeing what's going on outside, and he took us into his little writing studio and talked to us for hours, really. We had a lovely time with Ken at 4 in the morning, and I was completely smitten by that time. I was just over the moon. I'd finally met interesting people, right?
Exactly. Let's not lose sight. Roy Seaburn said to me, he goes, it was like meeting people for the first time that were totally familiar. I botched the line, but it was just like that kind of. It was like I've never met you, but you're familiar.
But I know you.
And
right.
I know you.
Like
That's it. There it is. Yeah.
And it was a really good sentence, and I could not have been more interested in this because I'm an avid reader, and I had never read any of his stuff. I was too young really for his stuff, and but. God, I was the biggest bookworm in the world, and so I'm sitting here listening to this famous author tell me how to construct a proper sentence, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And then he pulls out a drawer full of clippings, stuff he's clipped out of his own work and worked over, his work over.
Absolutely.
Stacks of sentences he isn't going to use, and he shows me how as the mice have started to chew on them, and they're all like have mouse chewings on them, and it was just fascinating. What a guy! He was so open to just talking to some random stranger chick, and telling his writing secrets too.
I've been thinking about it because of I know Sky Pilot and Walker. Obviously, Ken left us. But I mean, you're this like very like you're a hip cat, and you're very pretty, and you're a woman. So what did you bring as a woman? It was all dudes. I mean, maybe they were married, but the women weren't part of the pranksters. What was at the end of the day?
There was we had Gretchen in the pranksters, and she was just as pretty and smart as I am.
I guess my point is you were a doer. Would you say like what was the quality, like you wanted to be active, you wanted to stir the drink?
I did. I wanted to stir the drink, but I also wanted to inform. I wanted the information that they had, about living as a free person. Because having lost my job and just kind of floating through Palo Alto at 18, I needed a direction at that moment. I didn't have a direction, and they provided it. Oh, here's this direction. It's the direction of personal freedom, and
I dig.
That definitely resonated with me because as a rebel, pretty much. Pretty solidly rebellious all the way through my teen years. I latched onto that concept right away, and could see a doorway opening there, and scooted right for it because here were these really interesting people who did not live by regular rules whatsoever. They had expanded their sensitivities with psychedelics. And I had already experienced a psychedelic in the lab at Stanford, so I had because you got to remember this Life magazine came out like back in that day, and it talked about Leary and Alpert and Millbrook, and they were taking psychedelics. And what were psychedelics for? Oh, well, they help you to see God, perhaps.
Yes.
So I'm going, oh, I want to do that. I was right there with that concept, of course, because we're all so curious about what consciousness is, and why do we have this big brain, and what is it all for, and a human being is such a strange thing anyway. In the world of animals, we're really kind of weird, and trying to figure out what it's all about. I think that was my driving ambition, was to learn more, and the psychedelics offered knowledge to me, and so I was really interested at that point. And so they invited me back for a party like a week later, and this time I arrived on my motorcycle, which was like huge, right? Because girls don't have their own bike.
No, that's what
right?
I'm saying. I mean, you were bucking
But I
yeah.
did. So what if it was just a little? It was a Honda 90 by that time, and but I saw all of California on that thing. I went everywhere. It was really a great bike. But
3 days
anyway,
ride from Bakersfield.
So I turn up and I'm ready to do whatever they want to do, and that was really fun. And I had found my crew, and they still are.
Absolutely.
They're my best friends.
I mean, well, that's the beauty. And you are still, I mean, I had a chance to meet Mountain Girl in person. You are still just ensconced. You still live on farmland, the Kesey farmland there? Or is that?
I don't. No, I actually, as a 73-year-old, I live in town now.
Oh, it's still, you're in Eugene. Yeah, I mean, I dig that. I mean, such a touching thing. I want to play this for you, and then I want to get your reactions. Another Name That Voice. You're 1 for 1 so far.
But the problem was that all these festivals are outdoors, and Jerry had bad asthma. And he had hay fever, and, there's a lot of dust at a bluegrass festival. And there were more dates being booked. I mean, we could have kept going, but Jerry didn't dig it. It was too, the Dead itself was enough to deal with in terms of touring, all those people and logistics and how to make that work, and then to have another band that's going to be just like that, it didn't appeal to him. He wanted Olden in the Way to be fun. He didn't want it to become work. And so because we were still young in our 20s, the kind of motivation and excitement kind of went on for another year and a half, 2 years, and then just sort of disappeared. And all the old jokes took on a sinister meaning, We used to call each other, melon, hey, melon head, and laugh and, smoke. And, after a while, melon head became sinister. It became like, am I not pleasing you, buddy? A melon. It just went bad. It went bad. I don't know why. And it may have been the drugs, It may have been that the Grateful Dead was now beginning to consume Jerry because he left his home after that. In fact, he left Mountain Girl and the kids while we were still playing with him. And Mountain Girl was as close to us as Jerry was, and still is. I mean, she is a very candid person, and she was worried. She said, I don't know what Garcia is doing. Why? Now he's living over the hill, closer to the office, closer to the Grateful Dead thing. Well, I got to rehearse, so I better live close by. And these little changes you make, little changes, and you may not know what they are. And at one point,
you want to take a guess at who that is?
Oh, that's got to be Peter Rowan.
Mountain Girl. Okay, I just want to read this to you, and then you can riff any way you want. He said,
okay.
This is from Mr. Rowan, a dear friend of mine. He goes, I love Jerry, but we had to deal with this thing he was trapped in, this phantom ship called the Grateful Dead. There it was, always just off the coast, always sending longboards in to take Jerry back out. We're like, wait, we're playing music. And the response was, nope, he's got to come with us. And he was talking as a detriment to Olden in the Way. And can you just riff on, I think, the reality of the phantom ship?
Right. that is an interesting. That's an interesting thing because for me, I don't think it was really a phantom, but it had phantom-like aspects, because.
Like which ones? Like what?
Well, just the whole sort of ghostliness and skull and crossbones aspect. The whole thing that they were only partially a legitimate business. There was a lot of other kind of dealing going on all around. And I think it was a really rich environment for all sorts of characters to accrue to the whole dead scene, and the crew kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and all people would bring their friends in to work, and then we'd never see the end of them. They'd be there always, and it's been like that ever since. It was a great gatherer of people who needed a group to be adhering to. They needed something to be, and so they would come and work a few shifts with the dead, moving furniture, or equipment or something, and pretty soon they were fixtures. And this is not to denigrate; these people gave their lives.
Absolutely,
to that
absolutely, it's the truth.
We all did. It was more important than anything. And that was the magic and the mystery of the Grateful Dead. It was more important than anything else that you did. Was you had to be, on call. You had to give up everything if the phone rang. You had to go, and it was hard to miss a show. As I had kids, I had to miss shows all the time, and I hated missing them. They loved most of it, and they would take these crazy excursions into the music, and they would change stuff up, and you would hate to miss it. I hated hearing about it later from somebody else, and they say, "Oh, you should have heard what they did with the."
Well, Sunshine talked to me in depth about literally. She said it was the safe. At least when she was a girl, she was at the shows all the time. It was the safest place to be. That's the. Maybe when you had three babies at home, it would be hard. But still, it was like I talked to her. I'm like, this is insane considering the helicopter parenting that exists today. It was just like Mountain Girl was like, well, we're all just having a ball. Sunshine said, I knew where to find my parents, and she was at these shows spinning the trippers.
The deal was we couldn't get a babysitter in those days. Nobody wanted to babysit for us because they wanted to be at the. If we knew them and trusted them, they were at the show, right? So, until. When I had by the time I had 3 kids, we had babysitters at the show, and we could still go, and the kids were safe. Nothing bad ever happened. That was so interesting. Everybody looked after everybody else's shit. Pardon the verb.
Sorry.
But it was true. We did. We watched out for each other as best as we possibly could, which meant staying on your toes at the shows, and on whenever we were traveling too, you had to be very alert. If somebody be running off with a couple of little amplifiers after the show, it was your job to knock them down and grab them back. It was interesting. We were such a strong collective, and even though there eventually was some factionalization going on there in the crew, but only because the crew got so big. Toward the later years, it really got unwieldy.
You're whacked. You're now. You lived it. So Sunshine said that a lot of times in the morning when they would wake up, when she was a girl, Jerry would still be awake, coming home from gigs, and they would watch cartoons, and he would talk about what was a good cartoon, and then Bill Vitt talked about at Fantasy Studios, Jerry would be drawing these comic books, very cool comic books, and then so it was just always this crazy panoply wash of you guys were just fully creative in the house, and I guess I would always wonder dynamically did you and Jerry, when Jerry was there, present and as a father, how would when he was engaged, was he? Can you talk about his ability as a father? Because he had.
Oh yeah, he was not a gifted father, but he was very nice. He was a nice guy, and he was sweet to the kids, but he always had someplace he had to go that was more important than actually taking the kids anywhere. About the best he would come up with is let's all go to the movies. But even that was fraught because we'd have to stand in line. You know, and I mean, he'd get hit on so hard.
Oh, man.
Whenever we went out in public together, it was a little difficult. But, you know, it definitely distracted from the family feeling. It was, he had a tough road to hoe because he got so well, he was so distinctive looking. Everybody recognized him instantly. He was so recognizable, and there was no way to disguise that guy. It didn't work. And
did you first time I know you saw him with the jug band and that was
yeah.
But did you first hang with him at La Honda? Because I know the Dead used to come and play that. There was no pressure because
no, at La Honda was when I first I remember you guys from the Top of the Tangent gig, right? And oh yeah, and by that time they had Phil with them. By the time they came,
Phil
out
was
to play.
involved then. Wow, Phil wasn't in the jug band. He wasn't in the jug band.
No,
Yeah.
and that was Matthews, I think, that was playing in the jug band, but and many other people.
Bob Matthews again.
Wound up working for the band.
Jesus.
But David Parker and a whole bunch of his little buddies were in that jug band from time to time. But the star was definitely Pigpen. You know, he was always the star.
Always the
he
star.
Was always the lead guy. And he sang the blues and played the harmonica, and he did most of the talking, and he was, you know, let him never be forgotten. Pigpen was one of the most unique individuals you ever have met in your life. And what did Jerry say? He met him when he was 11. He met Pigpen when Pigpen was 11. Was sitting on the curb. The long, complex blues tunes with the endless verses and all that stuff.
Sure.
He just had it all down, and and so when golly, so much time's gone by.
Then the people rejoiced. They took to the streets. There was mayhem. There was madness. But it was not love. His decisive nature, no, it was not threatening to anyone. It was merely rejoicing. Authorities acquiesced. There's peace in the Senate. The president gets a good piece of ass. All is happy in the world.
chip seals on it.
I'm really into this this like desperate, urgent, factional time of the Grateful Dead, which was the early '80s, and the music. I mean, it's all I play for my younger daughters is live early '80s Dead.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's really, really on the edge. And but I wonder if Jerry talked to you about the anxiety that he was going to have at knowing that Pig was dying. He was going to have to step out and become the leader. Jerry didn't want to. Did he talk to you about that?
Oh, we talked about it a lot, and actually, because Pigpen had been ill for a while because we did that Europe '72 tour, and Pig was mostly just sitting in the back of the bus, looking kind of yellow and hurting. He hurt, his liver hurt, his body hurt at that point, and so we knew he wasn't really able to do more than 2 or 3 tunes a night for the show. So he was fading, and there was nothing we could do about it. He didn't stop drinking yet for a while after that. He needed to have quit drinking a lot sooner. But honest to God, he was such an enormous piece of the music that his passing came as a terrible shock to Jerry. I mean, we read we used to get the Chronicle and delivered to our house, and I would go out and get the paper in the morning, and we'd lie in bed and read the paper, and there was the headline that day that Pigpen had passed away, and Jerry was just completely overwrought by that, because he says, now what am I going to do? He says, I won't have Pigpen anymore. Now I have to get out in front and talk to people. And he's like, no. He was really upset by how it was going to change the dynamics of the band, and that was not. I mean, yeah, he was sorry about losing his pal, but he was also very concerned about how it was going to affect how the band played together.
I just want to be clear. Even though Pig was hurting in the back of the van, when he got up on the bandstand, he was still talking to the crowd and getting off.
Oh yeah. Oh, he put on a good show.
Wow, impressive. Really good to know that. Yeah.
Yeah, he always did. But when we came back from that Europe tour, he was not well at all at that point. So it was very sad. It was just really sad. And his girlfriend Veronica who we loved dearly, like a sister. She was just so brokenhearted over the whole thing. She'd done everything to help Pigpen, at least get on the mend. She did all she could. And it just broke her heart, and it was tough. And she didn't live much longer either herself. So it's just like, yeah, it was a very sad moment for us, and it was a huge loss. And I think the band came back together, and I didn't really hear it discussed a whole lot, like on stage. They didn't really talk about it too much. But they had to come together with a different act. They had to change their act because they couldn't do those long tunes anymore. That it gave them a rest when Pigpen would get out there and do the long talking blues stuff. And he was just a master at it. They could all just sit back and plonk a little bit and support him. And
I mean, they were. I
Jerry
mean, it's
Bill-
fair to say that. I mean, you saw them.
It was Pigpen's band at the first. In the early days.
Absolutely.
Grateful Dead was Pigpen's band, and he was the lead. He was the lead singer by far.
Yeah. No, I just wonder about like, because they clearly turned. I mean, they paid respects to their dear brother, and then moved into a different. I mean, Jerry was curious. He was going to. Lord knows you probably were at the Lion's Share to see him play with, all these crazy, Van Morrison would show up, and then also he was playing with Merle all the time.
Yeah.
And but
I can explain that.
I would no. I mean, this is. I guess what I'm trying to get down here is like. So you became you fell for Ken right away, like when he was.
Oh yeah.
And so then but you rediscovered the Dead. At La Honda, right? I mean, this was and then you were starting. So Kel was your
and changed their name from the Warlocks to the Dead.
You're gonna have to say that one more time. Go ahead.
Oh, they changed their name from the Warlocks to the Dead, to the Grateful Dead. And that, of course, was controversial.
Well, no, because but it was in San Jose, and Phil found out that there was a band on the East Coast called the Warlocks, so they changed.
The Warlocks, yeah.
And so where did so Mountain Girl, where did the name come from? Because there's this big.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Well, they had a copy of the 1928 big dictionary, those big huge ones that they have in libraries, and somehow that was at the house on Ashbury Street when they had first moved in there, or somehow. Anyway, Phil found this great big dictionary, and they said, well, we'll just look in here and we'll just open a page at random and you stick your finger in there. And I don't know who it was that stuck their finger in there to come up with whatever the new name was going to be, but the new name they came up with by just randomly sticking their finger in one of those big old dictionaries was Grateful Dead. And it's an actual name of a group of stories from the late Middle Ages, which were stories about finding a guy dying by the side of the road and paying for their burial and looking after their wife and children, and then in gratitude, the spirit of the dead guy would be so grateful that he would help the helper get his wishes taken care of. So the Grateful Dead were a spirit ally.
Did you know? Were you hip to that? Because I mean, you were obviously like trying to work out your own. I mean,
no, we asked them immediately, how the hell did you get that weird name, and what does it mean? So they had to explain it to us, and I got the explanation right from Phil and Jerry, so I know it's real.
So, but it's fair to say that you lived. Did you live at La Honda?
I lived at La Honda for a couple of years.
What?
I mean,
so, I mean, were you? I mean, how would that? This is what I'm trying to get at. Is like this is the most remarkable thing because.
Yeah.
Well, how did I know Paige Browning was bringing a lot of herb? You were growing a lot of herb though. Were you growing weed at that point or no?
Oh God, no! Nobody was. Nobody grew herb.
It was illegal. Yeah, it was illegal. Yeah.
There was all this fabulous Mexican weed packed with seeds. But
packed with seeds, man.
Good.
Packed with seeds.
I wish we had all those seeds right now because that was some amazing weed. And
I love that you think it was. You think it, so. When did in your mind? So Cal Seaburn again talks about you and Babs kind of setting the table, doing some like histrionics and talking about spaceships shooting off and like getting the crowd involved. But was SoCal the first acid test
Yeah, so that was the first proto acid test, and it was basically a party that we invited unknown people to, people we didn't know, and so it was like open. And that party at SoCal was at Ken Babs's house, which was a nice little spread south of town.
Babs,
not necessarily easy to find. Ken Babs being intrepid traveler,
Sky Pilot, man, unreal.
His proper prankster name.
What was, really? Is that what it was? What was What was it called? What was he?
Intrepid traveler.
Oh, I love this. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, you're making me remember stuff.
Well, no, the
Seaburn.
Seaburn said that you and Babs, like, because, people are kind of finding their own, feeling things out when they get there, and it starts to come on a little bit, and then you guys were like, blast off, it's getting time to blast off, and, the energy was getting higher, but, eventually, I mean, what's so amazing for me, looking at it from a sociological point of view, is that LSD, even though the handwriting was on the wall, it was still legal. Marijuana was not.
Yeah.
That's remarkable.
Isn't that weird? I
Yeah.
know. Well, but LSD just took a minute, and that also figured into our travel plans, because once we started doing the acid test, and that party was really fun. I missed the second one in San Jose because I went home to New York to visit my mom and dad. I had a plane ticket, and so I went. I missed number 2, but during the trip to upstate New York, where my mom and dad lived, I decided I was going to hustle my little bustle over to Millbrook and see what was going on.
Oh, really industrious. That's beautiful. How was that? Tell me about that.
And it was all in the papers. Just crazy times, Anyway, I went over there and knocked on the door, and they let me right in, and things were a little strange there, but it was fine. It was fine. And I had a nice visit. And wait, I had to drive Timothy to the bank in Poughkeepsie. And in the back seat of my mother's car, covered up with a blanket so the cops wouldn't see him, because he had to do some banking. And so anyway, it's a long story. It all fit together, things just kept happening. Once I committed myself to sort of the psychedelic trail, life got a lot more interesting. I met such great people.
the thing is that with Ken, those experiments at the VA were clinical and sterile. Millbrook was more like, hey, Mountain Girl. Did you actually go? Were you in isolation there? What was it?
I just went over and knocked on the door like at 2 p.m. on a random day when I was visiting my mom. So this would be like in November of whatever year that was. Whoops.
64 maybe? I don't know. 64?
Yeah, 64 probably. 64. Yeah, that seems about right. And it was very nice. They let me in and I looked all around and they needed to have a ride. So I took Timmy and his current wife for a ride through Poughkeepsie with him covered up in the back with a blanket. And never told my mom, of course, what I'd been doing. So, the whole thing was to keep the whole thing secret from the parents. Oh, I have friends. I'm staying with friends. I couldn't find it in my heart to tell them what we were really doing.
Well, they wouldn't have never understood anyway. I mean, it was just...
No, they wouldn't have. And I think I was 18 and 19 at the time. So I'm, Okay. So anyway, I think we're getting close to the end here, Jake.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's fine.
Help me wrap this up.
Well, I wanted to ask you if you believe that the Grateful Dead. What did the Grateful Dead learn from the Merry Pranksters, and what did the Merry Pranksters become inspired with from the Grateful Dead?
Well, I think that the pranksters inspired the Grateful Dead to go ahead and be who they were, and just go ahead and be weird and write strange music that didn't make any sense, because they did write some very strange stuff, after a while. And I also think that the Dead inspired the pranksters to go ahead and make a bigger stage show. And seek the spotlight. Go ahead, get in the spotlight, and be who you are. Do your best, get in the spotlight, have fun with the audience. And I think the Grateful Dead had fun with their audience too. So that was like it was like a mutual admiration society there for quite a while.
When you go and speak at colleges to cats, what is the most important thing that you want them to walk away with when you and Walker and Babs are doing your prankster routines? What's the essence of what you're trying?
Yeah, find your true friends and then have fun with it. If you're feeling creative, go with that. Go with your creativity. Don't settle for what somebody told you ought to be doing. Find it in your own soul, whatever that is. As long as it's fun.
Well,
I think it's got to pass the fun standard.
I would love to do a part 2 with you in the near future if possible. I know you got a jam, so it was really Mountain Girl. Have a great Qigong session.
Okay, I will indeed.
All right.
Thank you very much, Jake.
Later on.
Soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. You just can't make this stuff up. That's it for the Jake Feinberg Show on the road to Los Angeles. We'll see you later.
Flashing out like neon